Maria Pilar Sáez Navajas from La Rioja. She's the one that should be doing this talk. But she couldn't make it to Bordeaux, so she asked me to do it. So I'm going to do my best to convey the message, okay? I'm part of the project, but I'm not central to this project, okay? But I will do my best. So, yeah, so first, yeah, thanks the scientific committee for picking this paper. We are very honored. And let's talk about natural wines. As you know, we are in a sort of ecological transition. Everyone wants ecological things. And in this context, you saw a number of categories of wine that claims to be more ecological in different ways, with a bunch of labels in different countries. And among those green wine categories, you can find, organic, biodynamic. You know very well those categories that are a bit different from conventional wines because they have less additives and less enological processes during winemaking. Both of them come from organic grapes or biodynamic grapes, which are organic at the same time. And all those three, even conventional, get controlled. They are controlled by different organisms. And you have a sort of new, old green wine category called natural wines, a bit mysterious, with no regulations whatsoever. There is a first hint of regulations right now. So, it's quite smart advertising, like just the list of additives and then just grape. So wonderful. See the critical role of sulfur on this category, the absence of sulfur. It looks like it's a central concept on this category. And it looks like, at least in France, that's going to be the dominant label in the years to come. We will see. So as I said, there is control here, here, and here, but it's virtually no control in the natural wine. So whoever can claim being natural, and nothing is going to happen, basically. So the goal of the talk is to better understand this fuzzy wine category, natural wines. And we could do sensory chemistry, that's okay. But we don't have to forget the consumer, because we need to know what's the mental representation of consumers about this wine category. What are the properties, the values that they associate to this category? We don't know that, and how different cognitive variables can change the representation. Don't forget that the representation creates the expectations and selective attention, and that modifies perception. So at the end, mental representations are more important than they seem. So I want to start with the conceptual part, meaning that no tasting in those studies. And when I talk about cognitive variables, I'm basically talking about expertise and culture. I'm going to present just 3 studies quickly to have a hint of the landscape of the mind map on this category. But first of all, I want to know what's the representation of the natural wine supporters, the core fans of natural wine. So for that, we went to a natural wine fair in Barcelona, and we asked people there, because they were there and they were paying to be there. So we assume that they were all supporters of natural wines. And we just asked a simple question. When I say natural wine, what are the first words that come to your mind? And that's what we got. Everything is possible. Everything is positive. Everything is great. It's good for the planet. It tastes good. It's fresh. It's good for health. Come on. I mean, 13% of alcohol, and it's good for health. So, yeah, this is a very univocal vision of natural wines. One wonders how come everyone is not doing natural wines. Those are perfect wines. At least that's what they say. A bit more objective studies. Well, yeah, everything is perfect. A bit more objective studies with a more diverse panel of participants give a slightly different view of natural wines. For instance, Vecchio and co-workers in 21, they online survey with consumers from Italy and Spain to try to understand what was the mental representation of natural wines. And they found slightly different dimensions dominating each culture. In Italy, the environmentally friendly character of natural wine, the fact that they have no additives, and in Spanish, the focus was in the absence of sulfites. What is interesting in this study is that they found in both cultures that the more involved is the respondent in wine, the less they are likely to drink natural wines. So that's a bit different about this perfect vision we got from the fans. So about more nuanced results. So in this line, there is another paper from Maria Pilar. This time is about experts, no consumers, but experts, Spanish winemakers. What they wanted to know is what were the attitudes of Spanish winemakers towards natural wines. So they tried to check whether the main dimensions of the attitude were related to social, economic, cultural, health, environment, and sensory aspects of the wines. That's the first hypothesis. And the second, if there was a relationship between the healthy food habits of the experts and their environmental awareness. So for that, they did an online questionnaire to 359 winemakers. So a third of them were natural wine producers. That's very important. So it was a 4-part online questionnaire. The first part was the core of the questionnaire, the attitudes toward natural wine. But we needed also to measure the environmental awareness, the interest for natural wine, and obviously some socio-demographic information as usual. The environmental awareness was measured with a simple questionnaire with several statements and a scale from I'm not identified at all and I'm much identified. So it's basically about preserving natural resources and pollution, these kind of things. And we derived eco score, which was basically the average score of all those statements that characterize the ecological awareness of the respondent. So with all that, we did a PCA on the attitudes variables and cluster analysis, and then we got 5 clusters. And we put together the clusters with the eco score. You realize that we got a cluster 1 that was very concerned about climate, significantly more concerned than cluster 4, and those clusters are in between. So there is some difference in ecological awareness. And so you got cluster 4 that was characterized by a very low interest on natural wines, which makes sense with the ecological score was the lowest. And you got cluster 5 and cluster 1, which were the more interested on natural wines, and also were the clusters that got the more natural wine producers in the clusters, which is quite consistent. So the dimensions that characterize the clusters were for the more the highest eco score. So natural wines preserve traditional ways of making wine. There is a social identity when you make natural wines. Natural wines are eco-friendly. Natural wines are healthier. So a bit less for the cluster 5, a bit less for cluster 2. And those two clusters is nothing of that. They don't think anything about that. So we assume that they think the opposite. And there were so common ideas to all 5 clusters. Very interesting ideas. So everyone agreed there is some sensory issues with natural wines. And everyone agreed that there is an interesting economical opportunity in natural wines. There is a niche for that. So that has some economical interest, especially when you see the prices. So yeah, indeed, they found a link between the healthy food habits, environmental awareness, and the attitudes they mobilize towards natural wines. The last conceptual study I want to show you is from Isabel Urdapilleta and Wendy Parr. I think most of you know Wendy Parr. It was an interesting study comparing culture and expertise at the same time, which is a bit bigger. And not only in natural wines, but in conventional, organic, and natural, to see if those 3 categories were kind of the same for people or a bit different. So what they did an online survey, and they got more than 1,000 participants, which is quite good. And the methodology was a little bit like before. When I say natural wine, write down the words or expressions that immediately come to your mind. And then they have to rate the valence of each word they produced. They did it for natural, for organic, and for conventional. The results are quite good. I think it's very interesting to notice that French people had a quite positive representation of natural wines with virtually no effect of expertise. You see, hand-picked, nose of ice, good, organic, good, quality, healthy. So yeah, I was quite surprised to see that. And New Zealanders are a bit more critical on natural wines. No? Some good things, but some really negative things. And yeah, an orange is like orange. So yeah, that's an interesting cultural effect, and no significant expertise effect, which was a bit surprising. And see that conventional is always positive. Wine is always, it's pleasure, it's gastronomy, it's palatable, it's socializing, delicious. So yeah, that's the reference. So just to sum up, for now, we have different opinions about this wine category, in particular concerning the sensory properties of the wine category. You have people that think that it's perfect, good taste, freshness, authentic, whatever that means, authentic, and a bit more, mistrusting people, cloudy, wine false, unpredictable. I like this word. So it makes a lot of sense to keep on investigating on the sensory part and to support the sensory with some chemistry. So I'm going to present just 2 studies on this sensory and chemical exploration of natural wines. And the first study is on Spanish white wines. And what we did in this study is 28 Spanish white wines, 40 conventionals, 14 conventionals, 14 naturals, balanced by region and cultivar. We did some enological analysis, some color, turbidity, some aroma compounds, and toxins. We did toxins too. It's nothing to do with sensory, but. And the sensory approach was basically a free sorting task with group descriptions. And because we had so many wines, we split the sample set in 3 subsamples to make sorting, doable. We got a panel of 16 Spanish winemakers. Results. The chemistry did a few significant results, not many. So natural wines had higher pH, lower malic acid with could be related. They have higher volatile acidity and lower, obviously, lower total SO2. Makes sense by definition. They were significantly more yellow, which can be also related with the low SO2 values. And they were trouble, which can be related with the lack of filtration. And they have significantly more putrescine, which is an biogenamine. And I don't know if it is very toxic or not. That's not my specialty. And I don't even know if there is a limit, but it's OK. I mean, you're not going to die with that. So that's the chemistry. Let's see the sensory. That's the first subset of samples. That's the cluster analysis on the MDS coordinates of the sorting task. And that's the way people described the groups. So you see a nice group here. You know, the only thing you need to know is there is an N or a C. OK, easy. N means natural. So you have a group of natural here with a bit of a problem. And you have a mix of both quite OK, and a mix of both quite OK. So a bit of cluster, a natural cluster here with a bit of a problem. Chemistry tells us that there is the OIV of ethyl phenols is much higher for this cluster than for the others, significantly higher. And another surprise is we got significantly higher ethyl acetate on this cluster too, which confirms that the taster did quite good. The second subset of samples, we got a very beautiful cluster of natural wines here with some sensory issues too, while the others were quite normal. So we got a bit of volatile in this cluster, significantly more volatile in here than in here. And the third subset, we got a faulty vinegar vegetable cluster here with 3 natural wines, and a mix of them here and a mix of them here. Those are. So this is also an issue here, oxidation on animal. Let's see what the chemistry says. So we got some ethyl acetate, big OIV ethyl acetate here. We got some oxidative aldehydes here, basically here, which is quite consistent with the more cited descriptors on this cluster. And we have much higher ethyl phenols also for this cluster. So yeah, chemistry is supporting the description of the groups by the Spanish experts. Yeah, see the two clusters. So that's interesting. That let's notice here there are 2 conventional wines here. So yeah, it's not because you do conventional that you are free of faults, huh? But you know that already. So if I sum up for whites, we didn't manage to separate perfectly conventional from natural. 70% of the natural wines show signs of defects, and those effects were confirmed by physicochemical analysis, which means that 30% were defects-free and described with positive descriptors. And yeah, it's not because you do conventional winemaking that you don't have a risk of faults. So I'm going to finish with the red wine study. This time, 24 Spanish red wines, 12 natural, 12 conventional, again, balanced by region, grape, and variety and vintage. We did some basic enological analysis. We, again, did some sorting tasks with description of the groups, and we added a quality assessment from experts from 2 countries, so Spain and France. And we add an extra modality that is with information. So it was 2 quality assessments without information first and with information then. So see the way we sorry, it's a bit too low. I'm not sure you can see. But basically, in the no information, you have just the code of the sample. In the information, you have the code plus if it is natural or conventional. We expect a cultural effect, and we expect an information effect. We expect that when people know that the wine is natural, depending on their own representations, negative, positive, or whatever, they will change the scores, basically. So that's why the hypothesis, and those are the results. Remember, we split in 3 subsets because there are too many wines for one sorting task. For the first subset, it was based on Garnacha. We got pretty much a mix, a bit more natural here, a bit more conventional, but a bit of a mix. In the second subset, the mix was, really, really mixed. No clear separation. While the third subset was wonderful because you got almost a perfect separation between conventional and natural. We got just 2 intruders. We got a natural, but was an intruder in the conventional group, and the other way around. So that's very interesting. So keep an eye on those 2 guys because that's going to be quite fun when we will see how they are described. So remember, we describe the groups, so we can just calculate the frequency of citation of every sample and do a CA, and that's a CA of the frequency of citations, and we put as a supplementary variable the 4 quality assessments, meaning Spain with no information, Spain with information, French with no information, French with information. And the funny thing is that the correlation was huge between all 4 modalities. There is no culture effect, and there is no information effect. Okay, let's take it. I mean, I really expected difference. But that's okay. It's interesting. Somehow that means that, you are an enologist in France or in Spain, you are an enologist. And somehow you just get a bit format by the enology diploma, which is maybe not that bad. So let's take a look at the wines. So basically you got a nice cloud here where you only have 1 conventional wine. Remember the 2 wines we spotted in the 3rd cluster? So this is one of them. Look at that. This is a conventional wine. At least it didn't claim to be a natural wine. But when you see the total SO2 is very low. And you have this guy here, which is a natural wine. It claims to be a natural wine. Well, maybe. That's what I said. The lack of control, the lack of rules on this category is a bit of a problem, I think. So let me sum up for reds. So again, we didn't manage to separate perfectly conventional from natural. So natural wines, in average, were judged of less qualitative than conventional wines, and there was no effect of culture or expertise level, or information, or culture or information. And 45% of the wines were faulty, which means that 55 were not, which is a good news. So it looks like it works a bit better for reds than for whites. And let me conclude. So sensory evaluation supported by chemical analysis show that natural wines are not as sensory appealing as many natural wine supporters used to claim. But let me be a little bit provocative. Who has the authority to say what is beauty and what is not? What is good and what is not? What is pleasant and what is not? It's because I wanted to have some questions and comments, just to be sure that, I think that we need a serious debate on wine aesthetics. We have these kind of debates during coffee breaks. I think we need something a bit more structured about wine aesthetics, a theoretical framework to think about that. There are 2 philosophers that did an excellent work with this book. It's a very complete and complicated book, but they are philosophers. I mean, Make sense? And yeah, I wonder if you know, those very well known artists were hardly criticized in their time by the artists before them. So are we just doing the same with natural producers, or what? Let me finish showing the funding on this project and the team, the natural wine team that are at the origin of these works. And obviously, thank you for your attention.